Good morning, and welcome to the UT Austin School of Nursing's virtual reunion. My name is Amber Shaw, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we get started, we have a couple of informational items. First, to all of our Zoom attendees, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see a Q&A button. When you click this, a window will appear. I encourage you to submit your questions to our panelists at any time throughout their presentation. Also at the bottom of your Zoom screen is a chat function. Here, you'll be able to interact with alumni, friends, as well as our panelists. When you click this button on the bottom right side of your screen, you should see the chat window. Be sure to click to all panelists and attendees so that your friends and alumni can hear you and see you. For those of you joining us through YouTube Live, welcome. Please note that at YouTube Live, you will have a chat function as well where you can interact with each other. But please note that only Zoom attendees will be able to directly interact with our panelists. Last but not least, before each of our presentations, you'll have a couple of seconds of a disclaimer slide. And please note that this is just for our CEU credits. Before I roll into the presentation, there we go. Hope you enjoy.
Good morning, I'm Alexis Steifbergen, Dean of the UT Austin School of Nursing, and I'm so happy to welcome all of you to the 2020 Virtual Alumni Reunion. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and though we cannot be together in person in Austin, we hope that today's presentations will bring back that Texas nursing spirit you felt during your time with us. This year is very special as we celebrate our 60th year on the UT Austin campus and the year of the nurse and midwife. We are proud of the changes that have been happening within our school, from our initial beginnings in Galveston to part of the UT System School of Nursing and our evolution on the UT Austin campus. We have two presentations today from two of our very distinguished alumni. Dr. Mary Wakefield, MSN 1978 and PhD 1985, and Dr. Barbara Mann Wall, a nurse historian who's a BSN alumni from 1971. After each presentation, there will be a period for questions and answers, and we ask that you type your questions in the chat boxes so that the presenter can respond. We will have a short break between the two presentations, and we hope you will enjoy watching a brief video of some of the changes in the School of Nursing. We are kicking off our reunion with a presentation, Longhorn Nurses, Preparing Leaders to Change the World, by visiting Professor Mary Wakefield. After many years working as a key staff member for 2 U.S. senators and academic leadership in health policy, Dr. Wakefield was named by President Obama to serve as the administrator of the Health Resources Services Administration from 2009 to 2015. She then served as acting Deputy Secretary of the United States Department of Health and Human Services from 2015 through January 2017. In these positions, Dr. Wakefield led strategic department-wide initiatives in key health policy areas with a particular focus on health and human service programs for vulnerable populations. Her domestic policy work largely focused on improving health status for underserved populations. Dr. Wakefield is a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing, and just a year ago, we were celebrating with her in Washington as she was named a living legend by the American Academy of Nursing. She was elected to the Institute of Medicine of the National Academies in 2004, and she is presently the co-chair of the National Academy of Medicine Committee on the Future of Nursing 2020 to 2030. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mary Wakefield.
Hello, everyone. It's a delight to be part of today's celebration, marking such an important milestone for the UT Austin School of Nursing. Across 60 years, the school can lay claim to many achievements that you'll hear more about shortly. Achievements that are a product of the tremendous leaders who have guided the institution and who set a consistently high bar for its performance. Two of those deans who we're so fortunate to have participating today. The school's achievements are also a product of the faculty, professionals who have sustained the caliber of the program from its inception right through today. And the school can lay claim to achievements that are a product of those who studied here, the students who made the choice to pursue nursing at UT, some who have just graduated within the past year, to alums who graduated 30 to 40 or more years ago. I happen to fall in the latter category, of course, not the former. But regardless of what program we pursued, undergraduate or graduate, and regardless of when we pursued it, what all of us share is the common bond with this school and with the faculty, the administration, and the school's friends who have contributed so much to who we are, what we have done, and what we have yet to do across the nation and, yes, around the world. Even now, against the backdrop of a pandemic, there is much to acknowledge and celebrate with colleagues across all graduating classes. And speaking of celebrating, also this year, as each of you know, we're celebrating both Florence Nightingale's 200th birthday and the World Health Organization's timely declaration of 2020 as the Year of the Nurse. In no small part, because of our UT nursing education, we know of Nightingale's leadership that in large and small ways changed the world. Given UT's sharp focus on shaping graduates to change the world, and given the university's mascot, the Longhorn, a breed of cattle known for its stamina, ability to cover great distances, recognized as being strong and sturdy, and with horns that set it apart from any other breed of cattle, I would bet that had Florence Nightingale lived now instead of in the 1800s, I'm betting that she would have been a Longhorn nurse. Well, in all seriousness, I did not appreciate Nightingale's story nearly as much as I should have, as I was learning more about her while enrolled at UT. A fact that was probably not lost on one of our teachers at the time, Dr. Mimo Crowder, a nurse historian. But as is often the case for many of us, with the passage of time, I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate knowing now the breadth of Nightingale's contributions. However, as important as Nightingale's story is, for a few minutes today, I'm going to begin by briefly looking back and focusing on a different nurse's story, your story, and a little of mine too. From there, we'll move on to consider two areas where going forward, I believe we need to build on our individual stories and leverage our collective nursing leadership and expertise, all with the specific aim of improving health and healthcare. And then I'll end with a few thoughts about nursing leadership related to the times that we find ourselves in. So that's where we're headed over the next few minutes. And as mentioned, the first part of our journey, that begins with you. Right now, I'd like you to pause and think back to an important part of your professional story. That is the story that starts with your selecting and being selected to attend school at UT. I'd like you to take a moment and consider that story of your admission as a Longhorn nursing student, that part of your story that ultimately resulted in your becoming a Longhorn nursing alum and nurse leader. To do this, I'm going to pose a few questions to you, asking about your story and, as I mentioned, sharing a little of mine. And I'm hopeful that you'll give the questions a quick thought, and even better, perhaps have a pen and paper near you right now to write down some of those thoughts. So with that, here's my first question for you. What attracted you to UT's nursing program? Whether you made that decision 5 years ago or 45 years ago, what drew you to this place, this program, this faculty? As you think about it, maybe this School of Nursing was recommended to you by a colleague or a mentor. Perhaps UT Austin was in close geographic proximity to where you lived. Maybe it was a particular program focus or faculty member, or the pursuit of a nursing degree here that just felt right for you. Whatever brought you to learn here, that catalyst for your decision to enroll in UT's School of Nursing, it's worth reflecting on and celebrating, because it brought you to a school in which you can take great pride. For me, the appeal of UT was grounded in both pragmatism and program choice. Pragmatism, the tuition here for someone from out of state was incomprehensibly low, meaning for me, it was affordable, much more affordable than another well-regarded graduate nursing program that was 1,000 miles closer to where I lived at the time. Also for me, it was program choice. I was interested in continuing to practice as a medical surgical nurse and also aspired to teach. So here, a minor and a major were available to cover both bases. Well, back to you. Once you made the choice to pursue your education here, think back for a moment to the first few weeks and months of your experience at UT. Was it an exhilarating time for you, or was it intimidating? Was it a fairly easy transition for you, or alternatively, did you find it hard to stay the course? Perhaps for some of you, the jump to UT was easy. For me, I'd say it wasn't so much difficult as it was eye-opening. The first semester of my master's program, I stayed in the Jester graduate dorm. Coming from a small town in North Dakota and finding that the number of students in that dormitory building alone was larger than the population of my hometown, that was eye-opening. And being at a university where at the time the number of students, total students enrolled, was comparable to the number of people living in the largest city in my home state. That was eye-opening. And while both Texas and North Dakota have some commonalities, for example, they're both basically on the same longitude and they both share borders with different foreign countries, there are also, though, some fundamental differences. For one, I found myself frequently asking people to repeat themselves because for the life of me, I often could not understand that Texas accent that I was hearing. And in turn, on hearing me speak, I was often asked whether I was a Canadian. For some of you, Austin may have been a city you'd visited before or had already called home. For others of you, if you were like me, moving to Austin to study was your first trip to Austin ever. Now, it's at this juncture that I'm fairly certain my story parts ways with almost all of yours. That is, I'm guessing that most of you were not admitted to UT's nursing program on probation, but I was. I was admitted to the master's program on probation. Having so-so grades on my undergraduate nursing transcript, well, that was just not helpful. So the first few weeks in the classroom in the School of Nursing, personally, I was just happy to be there occupying a desk. But back to you. Once you walked through the doors of the nursing building and into classrooms, what were your first impressions? Did you find some classes challenging or relatively easy? Were they interesting or just a bit boring? How well did you perform in that first semester? Did you quickly see the strengths of the school, or did you discover them over time? I did not see the program's strengths then as clearly as I saw it later, in the rearview mirror. In hindsight, what I do know is that my career is a testament, though, to the exceptionalism of the UT Nursing School faculty and to the dean. What the Benedictine sisters could not accomplish in my undergraduate nursing program, the UT Nursing School faculty did. They took a student, admitted with less than stellar grades and academic performance, and helped me to reset my priorities, ultimately moving from barely making it over the bar to admission to the master's program to eventually serving in the second highest position in healthcare in the United States government, a place where no nurse in the nation had ever served before. That is an achievement, not my achievement so much as it is an achievement of this school. The faculty, who, instead of showing me the door, which they clearly could have done, and in fact, one of them, my advisor, Dr. Ruth Nicholson, threatened as much during my first semester's performance at UT, the faculty instead showed me what I needed to do. They taught me what I needed to know, and they also put high performance expectations out there that I had to reach. And so, like each of you, I did. And since then, every academic program that I've been affiliated with, I have measured against UT's School of Nursing. This school did then and does now make a singular difference. The expectation and commitment to achieving excellence here, it's palpable. Now, here's my last couple of questions that explore the UT part of your nursing story. And then we'll turn our attention away from our shared academic background and shift our focus collectively forward. When you came to UT, what kind of nursing were you intent on practicing? That is, what did you come here to prepare for? When I came back to UT to pursue a PhD, for me, it was to support a planned career in nursing education administration. I aspired to being a nursing dean or maybe a university provost someday. You know, really, you only had to observe Billy Brown in the classroom as your teacher or in her office as an administrator of the school to want to be just like her. So I was in what by many was affectionately referred to as the Deans in Training track. I know that some of you listening right now were in that track too. Like each of you, I had a sense of where I wanted to go in the nursing profession, or at least I thought I did. Once you graduated from UT, in your career that followed, did you stay on your planned nursing trajectory, or have you redirected to doing something else? With my master's and newly minted PhD in hand, I was on my set trajectory with focus and precision. It was like being launched from the Johnson Space Center. Dean Brown and some of the faculty were like ground control. We were periodically in touch when I would reach back with a question, and they would inquire about my progress and generously give advice. And then suddenly, less than 2 years after I completed my PhD, I changed the coordinates for my career and I sharply veered off course. There wasn't as much risk to my change of course as redirecting a space shuttle, but there was risk associated with that career change just the same. When I had the opportunity to take my first job in Washington, D.C., it meant leaving a very comfortable tenured associate professor position at the age of 32 and going to work in a completely different environment in a city where I had previously spent less than 24 hours. And trust me, Grand Forks, North Dakota, where I was teaching, and Washington, D.C., where I went to work on Capitol Hill, they are very different places. Working in nursing education versus working in the U.S. Senate, they are very different positions. And in case the thought crosses your mind as a question, money was not the motivator. I was paid less working on Capitol Hill, and the cost of living in that city was much more expensive. Instead, the motivator for me was about the opportunity that I thought I might find there. The opportunity to use my nursing education and experience to make a difference on a different scale. And though I didn't see it as fully then as I see it now, what taking that risk meant was bringing nursing expertise to roles and to seats at tables where few or no nurses had ever been, but where nurses, every single one of us, has so much to offer in informing and shaping large-scale change. Change that impacts the lives of people in our hometowns, in communities across the nation, and even helps to shape healthcare and health professions education around the world. So working in the United States Senate was to work in a setting where I had never been before, working with people I had never met before, doing work that I had never done before. Those are the things then that I did not bring with me. But what did I bring? Well, I brought this. While enrolled at UT Austin School of Nursing, I'd read about what went on in federal government because I'd taken a required course in the nursing master's degree program taught by a nurse and focusing on health policy. So for me, bases covered. But to be completely honest, once again, I did not fully appreciate during the time that I was in that master's program the importance and the value of that required health policy course. For example, I clearly recall to this day a book that was required reading in that health policy course. I don't recall the book so much because I was smitten by it, but rather because I so loathed reading it. The title, The Dance of Legislation. The book, which illustrated how federal health-related programs were developed, used as an example the establishment of a federal program called the National Health Service Corps. Little did I know then that years later, that very same $300 million National Health Service Corps program would be one of a set of over 80 federal programs that I would have responsibility for as the administrator of the Health Resources and Services Administration at HHS. There are many lessons in that anecdote that could be explored, including the obvious one: pay attention, because as I learned, you never know when you'll wish you had. So with that course serving as a major part of my content preparation, I moved into a world that I largely knew only from coursework and from listening to the news. But truthfully, my bases were fairly well covered, but not just because of that one course. Like all of you, I was trained at UT to go down a particular path. Yet that education was so robust that I was able to transition and apply what I'd learned to an entirely different path. What I came to realize, and no doubt you have too, is one of the hallmarks of a UT nursing education. That is, while graduates are clearly prepared to take on particular roles, the academic preparation provided at this school build out a foundation that allows graduates to move and succeed across an array of different career trajectories. Even as many UT nursing grads have achieved exceptionalism in attaining career goals, excelling just as they planned in nursing education, research, practice, and leadership, other UT nursing grads have moved to non-traditional positions and places and have and are making equivalent contributions. So what does this say about the School of Nursing, its administration, its faculty, and its graduates? It says to me that UT School of Nursing has been for decades not just preparing nurses to bend the curve. This School of Nursing, more often than not, graduates nurses who, wherever they work, are prepared to create the curve. In graduating class after graduating class, Longhorn nurses, contributing across an array of settings, bring their potential to create high impact on health and healthcare, whether it's impact on the health of one patient at a time or impact on entire populations. And by helping to shape our individual potential, this school helps to shape the forward-leaning potential of the entire nursing profession. So with that look back on our shared ties and impact of a UT School of Nursing education, let's turn now to look forward. Clearly, there are many issues and challenges that as UT graduates, we can bring our shared academic background to bear on. But I'm going to call out just two areas where I believe the potential for our collective contribution is substantial, and where the need is not only present, it is growing. Two areas of focus and work that on the face of it won't be new to any of you, but we're redoubling our efforts in educating the next generation nurses around these issues. We're applying nursing science to inform these issues. And we're creating ways to incorporate these issues into the work of professional nursing practice, where across all of these activities, nursing's leadership and expertise can make a world of difference to improving health. And let me say up front, to really do this work, not superficially, but deeply and meaningfully, it requires substantive preparation and commitment. Here's the first issue, beginning with the need to be filled. The health of individuals and communities across the nation relies on a continuous flow of accurate health-related information delivered by trusted sources. Because of the nature of our work, one of the strengths of nurses is their ability to communicate clearly and to educate. That very fundamental expertise of the nursing profession is needed now, and this need is growing exponentially. Here's a short synopsis of the background to this issue as I see it. Across the public, there are, of course, always knowledge gaps about facets of health and healthcare issues, whether it's consumers needing to know about the health impacts of vaping, or it's knowledge of the impact of social isolation on health, or it is the knowledge deficits needing to be filled with a novel infectious disease like COVID-19. There is always a cadence of health issues and challenges that prompt the need for more information and more public education. And more often than not, nurses have the expertise to fill those information gaps, those knowledge gaps that the media may have, that the public may have, that policymakers may have. The need for health-related information is always present. Given that ongoing need, who or what is a trusted information source for the public? A source that delivers actionable information that can inform behavior of individuals, families, communities, and more. Right now, you might be thinking, well, why is information sharing such a priority focus? Particularly since all of us know that access to information is far easier now than it was even 5 to 10 years ago. Now, health-related information is often just a couple of clicks away. So you might wonder, why would I flag this issue as a nursing priority? I'm prioritizing it because nurses also know that increasingly, information in the public domain is too often inaccurate, misleading, and often deliberately so. And unfortunately, we also know inaccurate information can and has been used unknowingly by people with an adverse impact on their health. I think that one of the most important lessons that this pandemic has taught us is that the public seeks information and often acts on it, at times unaware or indifferent to the accuracy of that information. Moreover, we are increasingly seeing an explicit cultivation of public attitudes to distrust science. As one US-based think tank cleverly referred to it a couple of years back, we're witnessing truth decay. And this is really startling because as a human population on this planet, we have advanced century after century, informed by science. As nurses, we would not think of deviating from using science to inform our practice. And similarly, we need to guard and protect and support the use of science in the public sphere as well, pushing out accurate information and pushing back on inaccurate information. It might even be pushing back on inaccurate observations from high-ranking government officials. It might be pushing back against efforts designed by others to denigrate science-based information and science-based recommendations. As a profession so trusted by the public, nurses' voices need to be heard to push back against distortions, half-truths, and disinformation campaigns that blanket communities and impact critical health decisions being made by individuals and families and even governments. If we, as trusted health professionals, do not use our voice to push back on untruths and affirm science-based information and knowledge, who exactly do we think will? Who do we think can and will do this from a place of trust, better than nurses can? Bottom line, when it comes to the health of the public, when it comes to health-related public policy, degrading or ignoring evidence, that's not good for anyone. In fact, this problem is viewed as so critical that most recently, just 6 weeks ago, the WHO and the United Nations issued a statement about deliberate efforts to disseminate incorrect information about COVID-19. Incorrect information designed to undermine public health responses. And they hit this problem hard, stating that, quote, misinformation costs lives. Without the appropriate trust and correct information, diagnostic tests go unused, immunization campaigns will not meet their targets, and the virus will continue to thrive. Furthermore, disinformation is polarizing public debate, amplifying hate speech, heightening the risk of conflict, and threatening long-term prospects for advancing democracy and social cohesion. Given this critically important identified need, what stands in the way of nurse leaders engaging in this space? Well, on one hand, community leaders, the media, policymakers, consumer organizations, and others do not typically see nurses as content experts and resources on health issues, and consequently, they don't seek nurses out. And on the other hand, nurses themselves don't always recognize the importance of and the need to take on this role. In other words, too often, within and outside the profession, nurses are recognized almost exclusively for the expertise that we bring to what we do. We are not recognized as often for the expertise that we bring to what we say. In fact, this disconnect is evident right now in the public and policymakers' views of nurses fighting COVID-19. As a result of the pandemic, there is vast public and policymaker recognition of the contributions nurses are making in the United States and around the world. Nurses are recognized as a critical line of defense between COVID-19 and the threatened health of individuals and communities. There is broad appreciation for the work that nurses are doing to help improve health and save lives. Where we do not have nearly as much recognition of and requests for is in the value of what nurses say. Nurses' ability to effectively communicate and share their knowledge is also critical to improving health and saving lives. In other words, right now, nurses are seen, this profession is highly visible to the public, but with few exceptions, nurses are not heard. It's true as well for our national nurses associations. Press releases from nursing associations are typically not covered the way that, for example, a medical association's statement on a health issue might be covered. Nurses might be sought out to describe their professional experiences or the experience of their patients, but they are far less often sought out as experts who can inform and guide the public and who lead in information sharing. Over the next few years, with focus and determination, we can, as educators, researchers, clinicians, and leaders, pave the way for the nursing profession's expertise to be viewed differently, and our profession's influence and contribution to be felt more broadly. In fact, right now might be the best time to chart a robust path forward. As a result of the WHO's declaration of 2020 as the year of the nurse, and as a result of this awful pandemic, nurses have garnered an intense amount of visibility, attention, and appreciation for what our profession does. So this is the time when nurses may be even more likely to be accepted as spokespersons in our hometown newspapers, in articles, in opinion editorials, on local radio stations and social media, at community meetings, and also informing public policymakers. And what nurses bring to this isn't just our expertise, as I mentioned earlier. Nurses also have the trust of the people we are trying to reach. Our ability to fully leverage nursing's expertise pivots in no small part on the public's trust in the profession. That trust provides a foundation for nurses to use their voice and to be heard. But this won't just happen. As nurse leaders, the question for each of us is how, individually and collectively, how can we use and amplify nursing's voice to advance the best interests of the public? And remember, while this work might feel foreign, it starts in very familiar territory. It starts with building out some of what nurses do extremely well: advocate and educate. But this work requires us to robustly build out these and other skills in ways that are far more substantial than we do now, aimed at a horizon that is far bigger than we see now. And there's one more feature to the public's need for a trusted information source that is worth noting. Not only are there multiple sources of information, including disinformation efforts around health issues, not only is there a derision of science like I have never seen in my lifetime, there is also a shift in the public's attitude about who they consider to be acceptable sources for information. That is, there are changes in who large swaths of the population are listening to. For example, a part of the population doesn't trust government spokespeople as credible voices on health issues. Well, what are the implications when that applies to messages coming from the head of your state's public health department, or from the head of the Centers for Disease Control, or from the head of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services? This recognition that traditional health leaders are less frequently viewed as legitimate information sources has prompted some experts to encourage alternatives, such as local, community-based experts. Nurses can help fill that gap as trusted experts within their own communities. nurses speaking out on important health problems and solutions, nurse experts highlighting issues ranging from management of opioid use disorder to preventing the spread of COVID-19 to addressing sources of childhood injuries. For nurses, there are supporting roles and lead roles in this work through blogs, podcasts, health columns, not with the profession acting as a one-off information source, but with the profession taking on the role of a consistent communicator of quality, user-friendly information. There are many things that need to happen to achieve this outcome, beginning with the expectation among nurses that this is part of our role, and beginning with building out the related skills threaded through every nurse's education. Preparing nurses to assess the public's knowledge needs, including the need for accurate information. Preparing nurses who can plan and implement strategies for meeting those needs. And preparing nurses to evaluate the impact of those strategies. All of this is a predicate to our profession fully taking on this work. If we do this work meaningfully and broadly across all of the roles nurses engage, we can help to address a substantial need for accurate information that too often is right now informed by inaccurate information, with resulting adverse impacts on the public's health. Well, with that, let me briefly tee up the second issue, another area where far more robust engagement by nurses is needed. Across the country, there are health systems, government agencies, think tanks, corporations, and other organizations that, if they had high-level input from nurses, these entities would come to better decisions, develop improved policies, and create more useful programs in service to the health of the public, if their work was informed by high-level input from nurse leaders. For example, healthcare delivery across health systems is undergoing redesign in real time, in part, but certainly not exclusively, because of COVID-19. Whether the redesign is focused on shifting to, as some call it, bricks and clicks, that is, healthcare delivered beyond traditional bricks and mortar boundaries to incorporate wearables, apps, artificial intelligence, and associated algorithms, or whether health systems design is focused on shifts in care delivery from hospitals to hospitals at home, or whether healthcare is structured around the new mantra of the patient will see you now. Regardless of these and many other new and emerging changes, virtually all of the major redesign that impact health, virtually all of this should be informed by nurses' knowledge and expertise. As someone who has and continues to serve on high-level task forces, committees, and boards that provide input to think tanks, healthcare systems, and government entities, I can say, based on decades of experience, we need to redouble our efforts. We need to redouble our efforts to bring stronger nursing preparation, presence, and voice to those venues where thought leaders, health systems leaders, and policy stakeholders advance health-related changes, recommendations, and policies. From firsthand experience, I know the difference a nurse's presence can make. And I'm betting that most, if not all of you, know it too. I also know how difficult it is for nurses to have impact from the periphery of decision-making, and how difficult it is to have impact when nurses engage after the fact, after plans are advanced or decisions are made. Well, I'm guessing that right about now, some of you might be asking yourselves, but why the need for the nursing profession in particular, when decisions are being made across these venues about health and healthcare? Well, the answer to the why question starts with the answer to what. That is, what nurses bring to those important decision-making tables is our expertise in meeting health needs across a wide array of settings, in and outpatient, school settings, public health, occupational health, and so on. Contributing in these arenas is a perfect use of nurses' expertise. For example, my nursing experience teaching nursing students in rural healthcare settings directly informed my work on federal programs that impact healthcare delivery in rural settings. Additionally, nurses bring a holistic understanding of the factors that impact health, including recognizing and working to address a family's social needs, for example, or social determinants of health that are impacting a community. And the other currency that we bring is our profession's North Star. It is nursing's core values, tightly wrapped up in an unwavering commitment to advance the health of others and the accompanying pursuit of pathways to achieve that aim. Advancing health for all people, regardless of who they are or where they hail from, regardless of their zip code, their genetic code, or their country code. In contrast to this orientation of the nursing profession, we have all seen actions taken and policies crafted that ignore, or even worse, divide communities into health haves and have-nots. We've seen policies advanced from local to national levels that create the tinder for differential health impacts that directly affect people's lives, their health, their well-being. In the public policy arena, for example, today you can see policy decisions made that bulk up a community, a state, or the nation's ability to prevent and respond to emerging health challenges, like COVID-19. You may see policy decisions that enhance a state or the nation's ability to ensure that every nurse has PPE. Or you may see policy decisions that don't. You may see policy decisions that on close examination erode health and healthcare capacity and that directly threaten health status of scores of thousands of Americans. So, just as important as a nurse's eye on a patient's matter and a nurse's actions taken for that patient matter, so too, nurses' eyes on healthcare decisions and policies matter, and nurses' input and actions related to healthcare decisions and policy matter. So nurses' engagement matters because nurses always, not sometimes, but always lead with the health of the public first. For me in the Obama administration, nursing's North Star was my touchstone for every single decision I made. And I made scores of decisions like each of you, large and small, every day. The North Star that I looked to and that guided me was always, without exception, to discern what was in the best interests of the health of a population, a community, or a nation, and to act based on that. To facilitate more high-level engagement of nurses across settings, and it's heresy to say it, I know, but based on my experience, the contributions of nurses need to be measured in more than just the number of refereed journal articles and speeches. We need to find new ways to lift up, quantify, and reward individual nurses' impact, and that includes nurses who shape and create programs or policies that impact the health of hundreds of people in a community or thousands of people across a state or nation. R01 funding, sure, it's important, but so is bringing in a competitive grant or serving on a board of an organization that provides health services to an underserved community. All of this has value, and we need to find ways that reward nursing faculty and nurses in other settings whose contributions have quantifiable impact on health. Not just after they're safely promoted or tenured, and not just after they're in leadership positions in healthcare settings. We need to support nurses who impact state health policy, who inform high-level health systems decisions, who co-author policy briefs that foundations and think tanks produce and disseminate, and so on. Clearly, nursing expertise has a great deal to offer at decision-making and policy-making tables. And nurses need to be aware that while some health and healthcare problems affecting individuals are appropriately addressed in exam rooms and patient rooms, some health and healthcare problems can only be addressed in boardrooms and hearing rooms. And this pandemic has clearly illustrated this point. That is, the worst side of this pandemic isn't just showing itself to be a brutally hard disease to manage, particularly when there are ineffective communications and ineffective policies from local to national levels. The worst side of this pandemic has also shown us the destructive disparities that run so deeply across communities of color, the poor, the displaced, and that have a sweeping impact on health status. These deep-seated disparities with direct impact on health aren't amenable to being addressed one person or one family at a time. They will only be addressed by upstream actions taken, actions that are informed by the nursing community, across an array of high-level venues. So these are the two issues around which nurses need to write new chapters, not just as part of our own individual stories, but as part of the nursing profession's story, all with the aim of achieving better health outcomes. We need to redouble nursing's efforts to communicate and broadly inform, and to participate in high-level decision-making and policy-making. I know that what I'm talking about asks a lot of nurses, particularly right now when there are so many competing demands. You might rightfully be asking, in the times that we find ourselves in, how is it even possible to take on this work? How can I possibly contribute some of the effort needed in these two priority areas? Well, it actually may be that building out the capacity for you to contribute to this work, that capacity building, it may be occurring right now, today. There is a noted authority on leadership, Warren Bennis, who has written about the circumstances that contribute to extraordinary leadership. The kind of leadership that I think we need to really advance the profession's contributions in the two areas that I've mentioned. And so I think Bennis's views are highly relevant to what many nurses face today. Bennis has said that extraordinary leaders find meaning in and learn from the most difficult, challenging events. They learn from events that are intense and events that are always unplanned. It's hard for me to imagine events that could be more intense or more unplanned than the competing, often faulty communication streams about even the fundamentals of protecting health in the midst of a pandemic. Communication streams that are in some cases chilling because they don't help, they effectively hurt the health of the public. It's hard for me to imagine policy decisions that could be more intense in their impact than those that leave millions of Americans without access to healthcare except access to an emergency room. Millions of people across our country who in the midst of a pandemic are without access to comprehensive health insurance, and so are without access to health care. It's hard for me to imagine healthcare systems designing strategies to address social determinants of health in their communities without the high-level guidance of nurses contributing to those designs. It's hard for me to imagine that we will achieve what the public needs without nursing education ascertaining the fit between those emerging needs and adjusting nurses' academic preparation accordingly in real time. To be sure, there is no shortage of work to be done to make meaningful strides in these two areas. Based on Bennis's observations of leaders in action, he says that from difficult, challenging events, extraordinary leaders emerge, more engaged and more committed than ever. I would guess that across all settings where one finds UT nurses, given today's almost unprecedented circumstances, one also finds extraordinary leaders. Leaders capable of doing the work needed to advance the public's health, even in, and perhaps because of, the challenging times that we find ourselves in. Looking back, Florence Nightingale was the pinnacle of extraordinary leadership. In a different time and in a different, intense experience, she was hugely influential in changing the course of healthcare and the impact of nurses on it. Hers was the impact of one. Ours, as UT grads, is the collective force of thousands. Thousands of UT nursing alums who are prepared to take on the mantle of extraordinary leadership to address priority issues in order to change the world. And in addition to having the benefit of our UT education, through the DNA of the nursing profession, I think that there is a little Nightingale in all of us. So let's use it and let's do it. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back, and thank you very much, Dr. Wakefield, for that wonderful presentation. We will now have 10 minutes for a Q&A for Dr. Wakefield. As a reminder to any new folks who have just joined us, you can definitely interact with all of your alumni and friends via the chat function, and just be sure to select 2 panelists and attendees from the bottom of that chat window. go ahead and get your last minute questions in for Dr. Wakefield. We already have one on the list. So Dr. Wakefield, this question comes from Debbie Callan. Is it true that there is little nurse involvement in higher levels of government in terms of being on task forces, et cetera, for COVID?
For COVID. First of all, thanks for the question. And I assume you're talking about federal level, or maybe Amber, that's what you mentioned. At the task force level, in terms of what I know, the White House task force, I am unaware of any nurses' voices there. There could be, but I'm unaware of that. At the level of senior positions across the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, in the secretary, in the seat of the secretary or the deputy secretary, or currently across any leadership position of the operating divisions of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, all of those operating divisions, of course, from SAMHSA to CDC to FDA, there is not a nurse in that has been named or was named to any of those senior positions currently. So at that level, my answer would be no, not that I'm aware of. However, certainly within operating divisions of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and so people who are working at that, at more of a programmatic level, there are nurses who are employed as career or civilian employees, just as there are doctors and dietitians and public masters in public health prepared folks who are employees of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. You can find them scattered here and there, regardless of the administration, whether it's Democratic or Republican, who are career officials who are working within those agencies. And so some of them certainly would be working on different features to address COVID. But at the highest levels, there are no nurses in those key positions. There were when I was there. I was not the only one when I directed the Health Resources and Services Administration. For example, the head of CMS at the time was also a nurse. At that time, the Deputy Surgeon General at the end of my tenure was a nurse, but I'm unaware of any nurses in those positions currently. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wakefield. Our next question: how do you suggest nurses work towards securing a seat at the table with healthcare policymakers and think tanks? Are there any professional associations you suggest which connect nurse leaders with these areas?
I think whether you're talking about local impact or state level impact or national level impact, from my vantage point and experience, a lot of people think about the currency as being always about money, PAC contributions, contributions to political campaigns, et cetera. Clearly, all of that matters. But from my experience, the currency is really relationships. It's building relationships with policymakers. It's building relationships within professional nursing organizations. It's building relationships across healthcare organizations. That's all really important, because at different points in time, if a nurse is interested in engaging for example, full-time in informing and influencing health policy, all of those individuals in those different venues can help to speak on your behalf, can be supportive of your garnering a position, whether it's an elected office or it's working, part-time or full-time in government, again, from local to state to federal level. So it's really building out relationships within nursing, to be sure, but outside of nursing as well. And I'll give you one example of that. Probably one of the most influential people in my getting the very first position in Washington, D.C. that I held as a legislative assistant in a U.S. Senator's office. The most influential person was the executive director of my state nurses association, the North Dakota Nurses Association. I'd been very involved early on in my career in that state nurses association. And when the time came, when I was interested in applying for a position at the federal level, working for a United States senator in health policy, unbeknownst to me, this executive director picked up the phone and she called that US senator who had the opportunity to hire me or not. She called him and she said, called him by his first name, said, Quentin, this is a person who's applied for that position. She's a nurse. You're up for re-election. 1 in 44 nurses, 1 in 44 voters is a nurse. You need to hire her. I thought for the longest time that the reason why I'd gotten that position in Washington, D.C., that first position, was because I had a PhD, because I'd been a teacher, because I'd been practicing in clinical areas. I knew something about higher ed and I knew something about healthcare. All of that certainly mattered. But what also mattered was that somebody who knew that senator on a first name basis picked up the phone and called him and said, you need to hire her. So that was some additional reference check, if you will, that helped make a difference to my getting that position when I first applied for it. So those are just some of the strategies. Relationships matter. Engagement in healthcare and nursing organizations that have policy as an active part of what they focus on, because not all nursing organizations do. It's really important to connect and to learn in the learning laboratories that they offer. That's where I learned and kind of cut my teeth at the state level, was through my state nurses association. Might be your specialty organization, or might be a non-nursing organization, but to really help to learn and to build relationships, critical first steps. Thanks for the question.
Wonderful. Now, I think we may have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. We'll see where this next one lands us. So, next question, Dr. Wakefield. Who were the most influential faculty members for you during your time at the school? And did they share any words of wisdom that have stuck with you throughout your career?
Well, I guess if I could, I'd preface that question with one observation. I think that what I've learned, I didn't know it then, but I've certainly learned it over time. Just as I've always thought that as a practicing nurse, when I was practicing clinically, what I did for any patient and for their family and with their family made a difference. So too, I recognized as a nurse educator that the engagement in clinical teaching, my engagement in classroom, made a difference to the students who were in that classroom, or the students who were working with me and alongside of me in clinical settings. My point is, nurses, whether they're academicians or they're interfacing with patients and families in various settings, make a difference that's often lifelong. And I would say that the faculty at the University of Texas at Austin very much had that impact on me. I don't remember every faculty member's name. I couldn't even tell you right now a word of wisdom that a faculty member would have shared with me. I can think of snippets of conversations, to be sure. But instead, what I would say is that I was very fortunate at UT Austin to have access to incredibly vibrant faculty. Angie Clark, Dr. Lynn Rue, Mimo Crowder, all faculty who set an extremely high bar for all students. And I would finally say that I was able, as many of my student classmates were as well, to benefit from an advisor, Dr. Laverne Gallman, who was the equivalent of the advisor's advisor. She was the best of the best. Anytime you needed help with any issue that you might be struggling with, she was there. And it seemed to me, observing her, that she loved her job advising students. And I think it's because of that so many students loved her. So across all faculty at the School of Nursing at the University of Texas at Austin, oh, were we fortunate as students. And I know that the nursing students that are there now and who've recently graduated are every bit as fortunate as we were many years ago, those of us who graduated decades ago now. Thanks for that question.
Wonderful. All right, we are out of time. I'm sorry that we can't answer all questions, but thank you again, Dr. Wakefield, for that presentation, and we really appreciate your time with us. So without further ado, everyone, we'll go ahead and roll in to a 25-minute break. During this time, please feel free to grab a snack, stretch your legs, And we will be rolling with our virtual tour of the School of Nursing, followed by a slideshow from our alumni submitted photos. So please stay tuned.
We are so glad that you could join us for this virtual reunion celebrating our 60 years on the UT Austin campus and the Year of the Nurse and Midwife. Since we were unable to gather in person, we thought you might enjoy seeing some of the changes that have taken place at the School of Nursing. In 1960, when Billy Brown and Mitzi Dreyer came to Austin from UTMB in Galveston, nursing classes and faculty were located in CP Hall, affectionately known to many of our alumni as the Barracks. While the structure was humble, the faculty and students excelled. The school quickly outgrew the World War II era space in CP Hall, and in 1971, construction started on a new 5-story building on what was then the far east edge of the University of Texas at Austin campus, near the old red brick Brackenridge Hospital. Faculty, staff, and students moved to the new building on Red River Street in 1973. While we continue to educate students and conduct research in the original 1973 building, many changes in our internal and external environment have occurred over the years. As many of you will remember, the School of Nursing and the Frank Irwin Center were the key buildings dominating the landscape on Red River Street for many years. During the University Centennial in 1983, Centennial Park was constructed immediately south of the School of Nursing, and for many years, students, faculty, and staff would enjoy visiting those green spaces during their day. Our outside spaces changed very little over the next 30 years until the initiation of the Dell Medical School in 2013. The long, graceful curve in Red River Street was straightened by the City of Austin, and Centennial Park became the site of a new hospital. The Dell Seton Medical Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Existing parking lots and the tennis courts gave way to 3 new medical school buildings constructed for education, clinical practice, and research. Today, far from being isolated on the eastern edge of the campus, the School of Nursing is in a central location in this new health district. Our location supports collaborations in research and our interprofessional education activities with the Dell Medical School, the College of Pharmacy, and the School of Social Work. Informed by a detailed master plan and supported by generous donors, we have spent the last 6 years upgrading our School of Nursing building to support the needs of students and faculty in the 21st century. Our most recent project has transformed the School of Nursing entrance and lobby. As you enter the building, you now see new signage that clearly identifies the School of Nursing. The Myrtle E. and Earl E. Walker lobby was made possible by a generous gift from the Walkers estate. Mr. and Mrs. Walker were among the early supporters of the school, and their scholarship fund has supported hundreds of students. The estate gift was given to the school by their daughter, alumna and former faculty member, Dr. Mary Walker. Features of the lobby include a lighted vestibule and an inlaid image of the School of Nursing pin in the terrazzo floor. A bronze bust of Florence Nightingale, donated by Dean Emerita Dolores Sands and her husband Art, graces the lobby. The new windows are over 25 feet high and surround the lobby in natural light. Just off the lobby, an interior courtyard provides outdoor space for studying and gathering. The wood furniture in the courtyard was custom made by UT carpenters who repurposed the trees from Centennial Park that were taken down during the construction of the Dell Seton Medical Center. On the opposite side of the courtyard is the Student Affairs space that was part of a 10,000 square feet addition to the building in 2009. This addition added a second and third floors to the building on what was previously the open back side of the building facing Waller Creek. The Student Affairs area, part of this new addition, provides access to the Walker Terrace overlooking Waller Creek. The Walker Terrace provides space for formal and informal gatherings and is equipped with colorful and comfortable furniture, a shade structure, and Wi-Fi. 2 bronze sculptures of Missouri box turtles grace the terrace. These sculptures were donated by Dr. Mary Walker in memory of the artist, her mother, Myrtle E. Walker. Students attending the UT Austin School of Nursing from 1973 to 2017 all sat and learned in the same auditorium-style, tiered classrooms on the first floor of the building. If you went to school here during that period of time, you would have found that the environment was unchanged. The same upholstered seats in avocado green, harvest gold, and sienna orange, and a distinct lack of electrical outlets to support the growing use of electronic devices. In 2017, with support from donors and the UT Austin Provost, we initiated a complete renovation of the classrooms and spaces on the ground floor of the building. This major renovation of over 13,000 square feet enabled us to create new classroom spaces that accommodate flexible, active, and team-based learning. We converted unused hallway spaces to accommodate the way students learn today. Student favorites include the comfortable furniture and updated technology, including multiple charging stations for their laptops, cell phones, and other essential devices. Other changes in the building included new simulation and skills labs on the 4th floor of the building to accommodate the important experiences for pre-licensure and advanced practice nursing students. In 2008, we opened a simulation room that accommodated 4 patient beds and provided limited simulation experiences to our students. In 2014 and 2015, we partnered with the new Dell Medical School to renovate and expand our existing simulation space to include 6 enclosed high-fidelity simulation rooms, 2 dedicated debriefing rooms, a custom AV capture and streaming system, wet-dry skills lab, and 2 flexible classrooms. In 2015, we updated all of our skills labs, including new flooring, lighting, and bedside computers to facilitate the implementation of a web-based electronic health record. During typical years, the simulation and skills labs now host over 18,000 student contact hours and 160 different simulations. Simulation, both in person and virtual, have become even more important during the COVID pandemic. In 2019, we renovated 12,000 square feet of the building to create a new student lounge space on the 5th floor and the Learning Enhancement and Academic Progress Center, the LEAP Center, on the 3rd floor. The LEAP Center provides space for quiet, individual study, as well as small group study rooms. The 5th floor provides a lounge for all our undergraduate and graduate students, as well as meeting rooms for small groups. Student organizations have office space in this area. And of course, a fully equipped kitchen helps sustain our students during their long class days in the building. We've also renovated many other offices and classrooms in the building, and we can't wait for you to see all the wonderful changes in your school. What we love most about these renovations is seeing the students actively use these spaces and knowing the environment is supporting their learning and professional growth. We hope you've enjoyed this brief tour of some of the recent changes in the building, and we invite all of you to come and see them in person.
Hi again. I hope you enjoyed that nice virtual tour of our spaces. We will now be rolling right into our alumni slideshow. Thank you to all of our alumni who have submitted photos. We loved seeing the School of Nursing through your eyes. So without further ado. Welcome back from the break. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the changes that have happened here at the School of Nursing through our virtual tour, and enjoyed taking that trip down memory lane with your fellow alumni and friends through the alumni photo slideshow. We will now move on to our next presentation by Dr. Barbara Mann-Wall. As a reminder to everyone, you may submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the chat function or using the Q&A function that's going to be located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And now, without further ado, we'll turn it over.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the virtual tour of our school's newly renovated areas. In the future, we look forward to inviting you back to the campus so you can view these changes in person with fellow alumni and friends. Our next presenter, Dr. Barbara Mann-Wall, will take us through the history of the UT Austin School of Nursing. Dr. Wall holds the Thomas A. Saunders III Professorship in Nursing at the University of Virginia School of Nursing. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from UT Austin in 1971 and co-authored the book, Through the Eyes of Nursing, Educational Reform at the University of Texas School of Nursing, along with Dean Emerita Billy J. Brown. We are glad to also welcome Dean Emerita Billy Brown, who will be joining us for a discussion after Dr. Wall's presentation. During Dean Brown's tenure from 1968 to 1989, she oversaw the growth of our undergraduate and graduate programs, a budding nursing research program, and a continuing education program. Together, Dean Brown and I will provide unique past and present perspectives on the UT Austin School of Nursing. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Barbara Mann-Wall.
Thank you, Dean Steinbergen, for that introduction, and I look very forward to seeing both you and Dean Brown virtually after we finish this particular presentation. In 1890, through the efforts of several women in Galveston, a board of lady managers asked Miss Dorothea Fick to help develop the John Seeley Hospital Training School for Nurses. In 1896, just 6 years after its founding, the training school became part of the medical department at the University of Texas in Galveston. Hospitals grew throughout the United States in the early 20th century as scientific and technologic strategies for dealing with illness and injury expanded. And nurses were the ones who made the proliferation of hospitals possible. Even today, one cannot have hospitals without nurses. Chaos resulted as the sick and injured began clustering into these facilities, and nursing brought a respectable, knowledgeable, and disciplined workforce to handle the Herculean problems that resulted. Schools that provided formal training for nurses became an American institution. Nurses worked at the bedside, they worked in the community, they worked in diet kitchens, and specifically, I think that's really important for today is that they learned to take care of patients in quarantine. Hospitals dominated the history of nursing in the first half of the 20th century, and a peculiar hospital-based nursing education system resulted that subsidized the rapid growth of America's hospital system. The John Seeley Hospital Training School for Nurses was such a program. It gave a diploma in nursing, not a baccalaureate degree, and it focused on regimented and procedure-based training. Nurses' identities were intertwined with their hospital programs where pride in their schools, their nursing caps and uniforms, and their pins were badges of distinction. The pins are still badges of distinction, even though the caps have gone away. Nurse historians have noted that in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, it didn't really matter that nurses did not know anything about the electrophysiology of the heart. No one expected a nurse to restart a stopped heart or correct a dysrhythmia. Neither the knowledge nor the technology existed for such interventions. If your heart stopped or you developed an intractable dysrhythmia, you died. On the other hand, nurses were expected to prevent the spread of bacterial infections among their patients in the hospitals and in communities. They were expected to dispense medications as prescribed by physicians, to keep order within the patient care units, and to keep their patients safe from harm, well-fed, clean, and comfortable. And I'm going to be coming back to this. In the 1940s, nursing leaders in Galveston and those across the United States engaged in a protracted effort to change the educational system to one that was in the university rather than the hospital. But hospital programs were slowly being phased out, including the one at Galveston, to be replaced by programs with a liberal arts education that integrated the biological, psychological, and social sciences. But this took a while. It was not until the 1960s that efforts became more successful in moving nursing education into the universities. By then, nurses were being called on to make rapid clinical decisions at the bedside. And to get the knowledge to provide safe and effective care, they had to learn in different ways. In the fall of 1960, Dean Marjorie Barthoff and the nursing faculty at Galveston made plans to teach beginning courses in nursing to freshmen and sophomores in Austin. For students, it meant that they could take advantage of the arts and sciences on the Austin campus, as well as the larger university facilities and activities. In 1961, 20 students had enrolled on the Austin campus. And by 1964, the number had tripled to 60. Clearly, the program was gaining in popularity. Galveston continued its School of Nursing on that campus, but the diploma program eventually closed. The faculty at Austin finally were able to acquire space for themselves in CP Hall, the World War II barracks on the UT campus that had been used since the spring of 1961. And that is where I got all of my nursing classes, at CP Hall. The passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act had direct implications for the state of Texas and the university. Administrators were pressured to desegregate all of university life, not just the classes, but the residence halls, athletics, and other extracurricular activities. Between 1968 and 1973, the percentage increase in enrollment of nursing students at Austin was 350%. Again, trying to crowd these people into CP Hall was a real challenge. It also included a more diversified student body. And I want to add here that placing more people of color into the history of the UT Austin School of Nursing is a project we're starting now. And we're very interested in hearing from students about their experiences. In 1968, the school reorganized as a separate and autonomous component. It was called the University of Texas Nursing School System-wide. Dr. Marilyn Willman became president of the system. In addition to Galveston and Austin, branches developed in El Paso, San Antonio, Fort Worth, and Houston. But the main campus moved to Austin. In 1972, the School of Nursing was officially renamed the UT System School of Nursing. And Dr. Billy Brown became the first dean. Until her retirement in 1989, she oversaw the growth of the undergraduate and graduate programs, nursing research programs, continuing education programs, and programs that literally sent students and sent nursing faculty all over the state and all over the nation. In 1967, the master's program in nursing moved from Galveston to the Austin campus. Master's programs had existed, to prepare students to be nursing service administrators or teachers in schools of nursing, but not clinical experts. But this changed as federal funding grew, and this was for clinically based programs all over the country. After 1965, for example, when Congress created Medicare and Medicaid, more newly insured people sought care, including general wellness and geriatric care. Physicians were too few to meet this need, and nurse practitioner programs developed across the country. In the 1970s in Austin, courses at the master's level began to include specialization in a preferred clinical area, such as medical, surgical, maternal child, geriatric, or psychiatric nursing. The faculty established both clinical nurse specialist and nurse practitioner programs. As student numbers grew at the UT Nursing School in Austin, so did the faculty members. The huge growth meant that adequate space, of course, was a problem. Timing was fortuitous since nursing schools were operating in the supportive environment that federal funding had created. So in 1969, the School of Nursing applied for construction money for a new building. State funding helped as well, and in 1973, a new 90,000 square foot building opened at 1710 Red River. So 2 different renovations have occurred since then, and you've gotten to see, to take a tour of it, and it is truly a state-of-the-art nursing school. It was in 1973, and it still is today. On March 26, 1976, the University of Texas System-Wide School of Nursing, which had been woman-centered and nursing-led, faced a dramatic crisis following a vote from the Board of Regents to decentralize the school. The School of Nursing in Austin then officially became part of the University of Texas at Austin. The San Antonio School became part of the San Antonio campus, etc. This did not go well with the nursing faculty and students who feared they would be losing their identity as a nursing school, and many protests occurred. It was a hard time. But ironically, the changes instigated by the Regents in 1976 did not result in the catastrophic problem nurses felt might occur. Thus, as with many lessons in history, an unexpected outcome occurred for the UT School of Nursing. The nursing faculty earned a new professional identity for themselves as they gained equal status with all other faculty within the university system. And faculty and students took this opportunity and ran with it. In 1974, the PhD program began here at Austin, which was essential to nurses securing status as a full-fledged member of the academic world. In 1989, the faculty's involvement in research had expanded to $2 million in grants, and the School of Nursing was ranked 6th among schools of nursing in the country. And that was the year that Dean Brown retired. Following her retirement, again in 1989, Dr. Dolores Sands became dean, and she served in this capacity until her retirement in 2009. In 2003, Gordon and Mary Kane donated $5 million to endow the Dolores V. Sands Chair in Nursing Research. And what had been called the Center for Healthcare Research and Evaluation became the Kane Center for Nursing Research. In 2010, Dr. Alexa Steifbergen became only the 3rd dean of the School of Nursing in its nearly 50-year history. That's a phenomenal record for the University of Texas. Nursing research continued to expand. Under Dean Steifbergen's tenure, the Center for Health Promotion and Disease Prevention Research and Underserved Populations received support from Gordon and Mary Hancock Kane Excellence Fund, and in 2011, St. David's Foundation endowed the center. In 2014, an NIH grant funded the Center for Transdisciplinary Collaborative Research and Self-Management Science. There are now 13 different research centers, programs, and initiatives here in the School of Nursing. While the nursing faculty's academic research roles have grown tremendously and are under control of the university, much of the clinical part of nursing still takes place in hospitals. So in 2016, a Doctor of Nursing Practice program formed, which educates nurses as clinical scholars skilled in the translation of research and other evidence into clinical practice. RN to BSN programs, alternate entry master's programs also grew over the years. So in closing, nurses maintain responsibility for a significant part of healthcare services in demand today. Look what is happening with the COVID pandemic. Just as hospitals in the early 20th century could not exist without nurses, neither can the health system today. When we know so little about therapeutics regarding COVID, it's nurses who can be expected to prevent the spread of bacterial and viral infections among themselves, their patients, and the community. They provide highly technical care today, but basic nursing care is still what is so needed, either in homes where people are dying from COVID-19, in long-term care facilities, or in hospitals. And we need to think about this. Nurses are the ones who keep order within the patient care units, keep their patients safe from harm, well-fed, clean, and comfortable. We are the nation's most highly regarded profession, and this school has led and is still leading the way. Congratulations to this wonderful school. Thank you. Well, greetings to both Dean Steifbergen and Dean Brown. I'm going to be asking each of you some questions individually, but first I want to just start by talking about some general questions. You both came to the University of Texas at Austin at very different cultural moments, not only in nursing history, but also American history. Dean Brown, I'll start with you first. What were your priorities when you came?
My priorities were honestly, to make the School of Nursing a part of the university, a real part of the university, and to be recognized as a School of Nursing on this campus.
So what do you see as your most important accomplishments?
The graduates. The graduates, truly, the graduates of the undergraduate and the graduate program. I can look around the country at the leaders in nursing, and many of them are graduates of this program.
Exactly, you're exactly right. They've spread everywhere. So what surprised you the most when you came here and with your activities here? What surprised you the most?
What surprised me most? I guess it really did surprise me that we had so much support from the healthcare community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that surprised me, but I was very pleased about that. Mitzi Noon, who was Mitzi Noon then, now Dreher, and I came, and we were expecting to be going uphill all the time, but we did not. We were accepted by the healthcare community.
Mm-hmm. So Dean Steifbergen, what were your priorities when you came?
Well, I think, I became dean during the last Great Recession, 2009-10, as we were facing very serious financial problems and significant budget cuts because of state funding. So overall, my priority was to be very strategic in everything we did. And that meant working in very transparent ways with our faculty and our staff to make hard choices and to really focus our efforts on what we could do best as the School of Nursing at the UT flagship institution. We engaged in a very focused strategic plan that didn't generate a 50-page document, but a one-page document that really helped guide us for 5 years, and then we have done it subsequently. But it really, initially, while it focused on surviving these very harsh financial realities, it was more than that, in that knowing that we needed to build and become better at what we do, because if you don't move forward, you get behind. And so we wanted to continue to build on the excellence of this school.
So what do you see as your most important accomplishments here?
Well, I think it's tricky to ask a current dean or a dean in her role what her most important accomplishments have been. But one of them, I would say, and it's interesting, it's very similar to what Dean Brown said. And I would say that one of the accomplishments was increasing the visibility of nursing and of our school on this campus and beyond. So of course, we have a very large campus here, 51,000 students now. And people used to tell me when I became dean that they would be in a meeting or somewhere and people would say, "What? We have a school of nursing? I didn't know we had a school of nursing."
Okay.
So I truly don't hear that anymore. And we have really raised our profile on this great campus. And that's happened due to the efforts of our outstanding students, undergraduates and graduates, and the roles they've taken in the university. They are very active and competitive. They are always wearing their Texas nursing shirts, so everyone knows from whence they come. They are winning undergraduate research competitions. They are showing extremely well in the Texas Access 40-Acre Scholar Program. They were one of 7 groups on the university to win the President's Award for Global Learning. So all kinds of great things that, again, show how special nursing is. And then our faculty have become so active leading across this campus. And again, we are very small compared to other schools, but I think we are really recognized as each of these faculty go out in whatever way they're serving the university and illustrate how valuable nurses are. For example, our clinical faculty, when the provost's office decided to establish the provost teaching fellows, there were, I think, only 5 or 6 in the initial cohort. One of those was from the School of Nursing. And since that time, there has always been at least 1, if not 2, provost teaching fellows, because we're so well recognized for the great work that we do with our students, and especially around experiential learning, which of course nursing has been doing for decades, but other disciplines are just now sort of trying to figure out how to do that. I am very proud of our accomplishments in interprofessional education programs with pharmacy, medicine, and social work that have received national awards. And, just overall, I would say we've been doing great work within our walls and within our discipline in nursing for decades. Mm-hmm. And I think being sort of inward focused was the right thing to do when we got started. We had to build our strength and get stronger. And we didn't want to just disperse it all over the place. But now I think we have the strength. We can make the time, the effort to reach outside of our own discipline, our own walls. And it doesn't weaken us. It really strengthens us when we have these transdisciplinary collaborations. And that's where the real magic happens. And it enhances our research, it enhances our educational efforts for all of our students and our service initiatives. And that only happens if people know that there is a School of Nursing and they know who you are. So I think, that's very important. The other accomplishments I would say would be around the endowments that we've worked very hard to continue on the work started by Dean Brown and Dean Sands to build those endowments for the school that go on forever. It's pretty exciting to think somebody gives a scholarship in 2010. It'll be supporting the school, nursing students, whatever they gave it for, 50, 100 years from now. When all of us are gone, that work will still be going on. And the planned gifts that several very generous individuals have given and made will ensure that really the school can continue to do its great work in the future when we're not here, but it will help continue the school, certainly help continue nursing in its best.
I want to come back to Dean Brown. You came to Austin in the 1960s and stayed until 1989. These were tumultuous and divisive times, marked by the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, the anti-war protests, political assassinations, President Johnson's inauguration of affirmative action. What I remember about those years, and again, this is when I was here, I remember your calm leadership throughout. How did you see your role as a leader of the faculty and students during this very difficult time?
It was a very difficult time because I had many feelings the same as the faculty did, but I had to reassure the faculty and the students that we were doing the right thing by going with UT Austin and developing the school and continuing on the path that we had started out as a system-wide school. And I think, Barbara, I think we accomplished that. I think we proved ourselves to be worthy of being called a school of nursing. And I'm very pleased about that. I'm pleased that the faculty went along with that and supported me and my thoughts about it.
And I will say that there is a PowerPoint presentation available that people can look at. And I have a picture of the faculty in 1972.
Oh.
And it was really fun to look at that because I recognized a lot of them. And so that'll be fun for other people, I think, to look at.
Yes.
So these were also years of great creativity in nursing. Again, you know, we had gotten funding, nursing got funding from the 1964 Nurse Training Act. The ANA came out in support in 1965 in support of baccalaureate education. So, but the programs here under your leadership had to start from scratch. And the baccalaureate, the clinical masters, the PhD programs, they started from scratch as nursing was coming into its own. Can you talk about this hectic time in nursing in Texas at that time?
Well, yes. Let me mention something that we passed over just sort of quickly before when we talked about our continuing education program. It was very important to the community. It didn't build anything as far as the School of Nursing was concerned, but when we were a part of the system, UT system, we were able to have the continuing education program and had people, both Dorothy Bloom and Joyce Hoover, who were head of the program, who made it available to the community. We were seen as the leaders in helping the community, the nurses in the community, develop their skills. And I'm very pleased about that. I'm not real sure if I've answered your specific question, Barbara,
Sure.
but I want to be sure to get that in about continuing education, because I do believe that at the time, the continuing education program was extremely important to all of us, to nursing and the community of healthcare.
Well, and again, the baccalaureate nursing programs were just starting. They were building, and with UT being the leader, you were the leaders who were sending out the knowledge and spreading that knowledge to the others. And I do remember Dorothy Bloom. And Billy, I was cleaning out my bookshelf the other day, and I still have her book on dosages and solutions.
Oh my.
She taught me in probably 1969, and it was the best book ever. So she probably did that with continuing ed too. So in 1972, the ANA accepted the report about affirmative action to rectify the inequities experienced by minority nurses. How did that impact the School of Nursing here in Austin?
Do you know, we always had minorities. We had Black students from the beginning, and we had male students, and those two were minorities. The men were minorities. But we had, percentage-wise, we had more Black students than the other programs in the university had at the time. I know
that's really interesting to know and to think about and to build on. I think that's a great point, Billy. And it says something about nursing's need for diverse populations to take care of the patients. And I understand that nurses from the Hispanic populations were coming into nursing, and so it was a really, the 70s were a period when all of that was especially growing. Dean Brown, we've talked about your roles here at the University of Texas in Austin, but for the people who are watching this, Dean Brown has been a national and international leader. The American Association of Colleges of Nursing formed during this time, and you eventually became president. You were also president of Sigma Theta Tau. So what were your goals and accomplishments as these national and international organizations were getting underway?
To make ourselves available to the at the international level, as well as in the United States of America. But and we did that. We did that both in Sigma Theta Tau International, and have done so with the American Association of Colleges of Nursing. Not as fast as with Sigma Theta Tau, but AACN now includes international members.
So Sigma Theta Tau started off really as a national, but became international.
Yes, yes. And while I was president, we brought in several international places, like we went to Korea and Taiwan. And those were two of the ones. We went to Spain, but Spain, I believe they started the program, international Sigma Theta Tau, later.
So those were really, really significant times too in terms of your leadership. And I do have to say that one of the pictures in my PowerPoint slide is a picture of you and Virginia Henderson. And I consider that one of the classic photographs in nursing history of all, because it shows two international leaders sitting together in one photograph.
Yes.
So, I hope that
you visited here, you know.
Yes.
Here because a former chancellor was a nephew of hers.
Really?
Yes. And so she visited here, and we had a lot of time with her. Love to come here.
Yes. I also have her book, Principles and Practices of Nursing. I still have that. Now I want to ask Dean Steifbergen some questions. So to Dean Steifbergen, to an extent not found in previous generations, nurses now see themselves as knowledge producers. When you became dean, you came as a leading researcher in the nation. You served on the NIH National Advisory Council for Nursing Research, and you brought in millions of dollars of research funding. But contextual factors, once again, have affected nursing, including wars and budgetary cuts at the national and state levels. How have you, as a dean, negotiated these tumultuous years of funding?
Well, these have definitely been challenging times in terms of budgets and, of course, overall budgeted funding, but that's all had an impact on research funding, really just as nursing was getting their feet and doing so well in terms of research. Then a lot of these contextual factors came into play. And I think how we've approached this here has been to focus on really recruiting the best faculty and supporting those faculty who are doing research so that they can develop their work to be competitive at the national level, because that is very, very difficult. So some of the things we've been able to do is to provide significant startup funding for our nursing faculty and release time for new faculty to launch their research. And we recruit nationally, so throughout the country, and we look very carefully at how people are positioned and what is their trajectory for what work they're doing. So I guess I'd have to say the key way we've handled that is really by increasing the quality of our faculty. And then we've been creative about how we could recruit, support, and retain them with the resources that we have that were under pressure. And I've been pretty vocal, I might say very vocal, in my requests to the university. And I've always provided those with data to support them. So not just give me more money because we need this and it's a good thing, but here is the productivity of the faculty we have. Here is how few faculty we have compared to other schools of nursing. So providing data, and by and large, they have been very supportive of our strategic efforts to both grow the faculty in quantity and quality.
So one of the great, what I see as an accomplishment in nursing's history is the separation from the medical school that with the diploma programs that had been so involved with medical schools, and many of these diploma programs, the doctors were head of the programs, the doctors were the teachers, the faculty members, and that all of course changed, and that changed especially in Dean Brown's tenure, and she worked really hard on that. But now, after 100 and something years, the University of Texas at Austin now has a medical school branch here. It's always been in Galveston, and doctors have always wanted it to come here, and that is finally here. So you work now on the same campus as the UT Medical School. How do you inject nursing into this new power structure, and what challenges have you faced?
Well, Barbara, that's a great question. And I have to say that it's the most frequent question I get whenever I talk to groups of nurses or donors or parents or alumni is, how's it going with the Dell Medical School? And one thing that's very interesting, is I always think we have an advantage because we were here first and we can build on all the great work of those who've come before us, all the strength that nursing had already established. And I hope that we've been able to show you in our presentation how much the exterior environment has changed. So many of you who went to school here in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even the 2000s, remember it was us and the Irwin Center, sort of all here by ourselves. And now, we really have an ideal location in the center of what we call the healthcare district, not the medical district, but the healthcare district. So I think we're very well positioned. And once that decision was made that UT Austin was going to have a new medical school, I put enormous time and effort in to the startup of the Dell Medical School. I served on the university-wide steering committee that started it. I served on their building committee, so I learned a lot about building that I've used to help our own work here. And I was on the search committee for almost every inaugural department chair. And I did that because I didn't have experience in a health science center. And one of the things I knew before I started, and I became even more aware of, is that academic medicine has a very different culture than academic nursing. And I say that without injecting a value judgment. They are simply very different. They have different histories. Our funding models are completely different. And perhaps, I think one of the biggest differences is how faculty interact, faculty at the different schools interact with their people in practice from their discipline. So, and honestly, they don't have any they didn't have the knowledge or history of what had gone on with our discipline in terms of separating from being really being in schools that were run by physicians. And so one of the things I've tried to do through the appointments I've had was not only to learn about their culture, but to help their dean and his leadership team learn about our culture and the differences there. That again, they're just very different cultures. Building these close relationships has been really important, both with their dean, but also people in their leadership team, because problems do come up, and they often come up because we're operating out of two different cultures. And so if you assume that something they did that was irritating or you didn't like or didn't make sense was because it had a negative intent, it's often made perfect sense in their culture where it didn't in ours. So one of the great things has been having these relationships so that when these problems occur, we simply have discussions, we work them out, and again, I think that's necessary in all of our lives to try to understand and listen to where other people are coming from.
And that's a very good point. When I teach history to nursing students, I always say the history of nursing and the history of medicine are very different. Mm-hmm. They follow different trajectories, and they're all equally important. They're just different.
Yeah.
So well, now we come, and I'm going to be bringing up the challenges of COVID-19 and this pandemic. During this particularly stressful time, what are some unexpected lessons that you've learned, and how has the School of Nursing dealt with it?
Well, these last 8 months have been incredibly difficult for everyone, given these triple crises of COVID, the economic downturn, and certainly the awareness of all the racial injustices in our country. So that, I guess one of the things I would have say I'd learned from that is that, of course, we're stronger than we think we are. And in many ways, while these have been incredibly difficult and stressful times for our faculty, for our staff, our students, and our alumni, what has been most encouraging is how all of those individuals have come together to support the school and the profession. And Barbara, as a historian, I know you've shared with me, and you mentioned today, how sometimes we look back at what we thought was our worst moments in time. Mm-hmm. And what we realize later is that those in the crucible of that pain, it opened the door for a new future. Mm-hmm. And so maybe, you know, the lessons have not been so unexpected, but I think they've been very reaffirming about that what we have always been about. We've reaffirmed that, caring about our students and each other, striving to communicate clearly and transparently in these very uncertain times, and reaching out and staying connected. And in the context of these crises, we've just realized how much more important and valuable that is. I always had an open door for students. I met with them, you know, maybe once or twice a semester. Now I see them weekly, or, you know, have done dozens of town halls, some of which have been very emotional for me and for them, as we talk about their losses and their fears and anxiety. But eventually, you know, they get it, that what, you know, we have this priority that we are working to keep everyone safe as possible. And secondly, to help them continue and be successful in their educational journey. So, you know, what I've been most grateful for is how hard everyone has worked together to keep those going. And we've had wonderful support from our alumni and from our donors who have helped us with all these unexpected and unbudgeted costs. Who knew we were going to need to spend 6 figures on PPE? You know, that first of all, we had to figure out how to acquire as much as we needed. But in order to keep our students and our faculty safe in clinical settings and in our skills lab, and we've just directed over $1 million to student scholarships this fall. And let me tell you that that's a lot of money, but it's not near enough for the need. Our students are suffering. And I think, you know, we have to do everything we can. I'm redirecting funds as much as I'm allowed to support them and, you know, meeting some of their needs, because the worst thing that could come out of all of this is if we are not able to continue to produce well-educated nurses to become leaders. We see in this crisis how important nurses are, and if we are not able to keep them in clinical, not able to keep educating them, if we're not able to acquire what we need, you know, we'll lose a year of nurses in a time when we really can't afford to do that. And so I think the fact that we've worked together and we've constantly adapted to new data, this has been, you know, a real lesson in flexibility and adaptation, and that we've communicated the mission clearly and consistently to all of our constituents.
Thank you. So now I want to go to, in closing, I really want to ask both deans. To Dean Brown, What advice would you give to nursing students coming to the University of Texas at Austin School of Nursing today? What advice would you give them?
What advice would I give to them? I would give them advice to enter the social world of the university, which includes basketball and football, and especially the women's basketball team.
Well, and I think that was one of the things that when you all were considering moving to Austin, was what the Austin campus could offer that a place like Galveston could not. And that was the extracurricular activities besides the liberal arts education. And of course, Austin has become the most popular campus of all of the University of Texas Nursing School campuses now.
Well, I'm sure it has, and I think for good reason.
Yeah. So Dean Steinberger, what advice do you give to students now coming into nursing here?
Well, yes, I get to give this advice. And first of all, I would tell them, you know, they're so lucky to be here and that this is the very best time in history to be a nurse. And I think they just won the lottery. They're going to get a world-class education that's going to prepare them for the future, for them to keep on growing and learning. And just like Dean Brown said, you know, good minds think alike here. I really advise them to take advantage of all the resources and opportunities of the school and the university as a whole. This is their time in life to have that great support system and resources to take advantage of. We prepare them with all the knowledge and competencies, just like all good nursing programs do. But even more importantly, we want to prepare them to be leaders in nursing. And we do that through our example and also through the opportunities they have in our community and our university. And finally, I like to tell them that when they successfully complete the program and become a professional nurse, they will have the great privilege of making a difference with their work in the lives of the people they meet and they serve. And it's, you know, they're very lucky, and we're lucky to have them.
And again, and I thank you to both of you very much for your insights and your leadership and all that you have done to the School of Nursing here and to the entire country and nation and the world. And I'll close again by, and it's hard not to get emotional when so much is happening with this COVID pandemic. But I do hope that everyone gets to hear Dr. Dean Steinbergen's address that she gave to the graduates that had to be taped, and graduates had to see it on Zoom, but it was very moving. And she commented on how proud she was of all of the students, and it made me think how proud I am of being a nurse. And I've never been so proud of people in all my life. And I've had I was started off by Dean Brown, and thank you for doing everything that you did, Dean Brown, for starting us off.
And aren't I the lucky one to have two graduates involved with this program, you and the Dean?
Well, but we thank you very much. And to Dean Steinbergen, thank you for all of you and your students and your staff and everyone for the hard work that you have put in this most unusual time. And it's been a pleasure to talk with both of you today. So thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome back. A big thank you to Dean Steinbergen, Dr. Wall, and Dean Brown for your time there. We will now have 10 minutes for questions to all of our panelists. Let's see here. Now, if all of our panelists will go ahead and unmute themselves and come on our screen, we'll go ahead and get started. All righty. So the first question will be going to Dean Steinbergen. Dean Steinbergen, you mentioned learning about physicians educational culture, nursing educational culture. Can you share some examples of the differences between these two educational cultures and how the School of Nursing has partnered with the medical school given these differences?
Well, I think, some of the discussion that Barbara had about the evolving nature of nursing education. And I'm glad I knew that history, and it's been very different for medicine. So the place I see that the most clearly is in what I'd call the separation, not separation, but they're much more involved in practice. So medical school faculty, when we've hired some of these individuals, amazing people with great histories and CVs, but they expect that they're going to be practicing in hospital settings or clinic settings for a couple of days a week. That is, in fact, one of the chairs said, well, how could I possibly lead the development of knowledge in this area if I wasn't practicing? And I think, in nursing, we've seen, we partly because it was a reaction to nursing wanting to have more independence and being in an academic setting, that we're just now getting back to the point where we're having stronger academic and practice collaborations. So I think that's one way. They have certainly a different funding model, and I'd say that's been a little challenging even for the whole university to kind of figure that part out. They have different relationships with their faculty. So they have a very, very, very large faculty, but that is mainly community physicians who are involved with the school. So I think it's been important to help them learn about some of the things we can and we can't do, or the reasons that things work and don't work. So it's definitely a work in progress, but I think they've been very open to learning and understanding, and so have we. So.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
Can I just add one thing about that too? That historically, as we look at the difference between medicine and nursing, another area, and that Alexis pointed this out so well, but to look at the curriculum over time. And what we see is in the medical school curriculum of the 1900s, it was all the sciences. The medical school curriculum of the 2015s to 2020, it's still the sciences. That curriculum has hardly changed. And the nursing curricula, of course, the curricula has grown over time. And the nursing has so much more of the humanities integrated into it. Besides what we call the biopsychosocial, and yes, medicine does that too, but you look at their curricula, and it is so heavily in the sciences. Now, someone will say, well, that's the reason doctors know more than nurses. Well, no, it's not. And so that it's just very interesting how nursing has grown with the times, I think, and has expanded our own knowledge, but also the way that we take care of patients.
Thank you, Dr. Wall.
Can I jump in for just one last comment, which is this medical school, which is fairly non-traditional and is focused on population health and value-based care. Actually, what they're doing and preaching is nursing. And I keep telling them, I'm really glad they discovered these truths, but I wish they would give us a little more credit for it. And they always get me sort of surprised, but it's the truth, and so I think it's great for the population and for care that they're beginning to integrate a lot more of these aspects of the humanistic care.
Thank you very much. All righty, our next question is going to be for Dean Emerita Billie J. Brown. Dean Brown. One second, there we go, found my questions. Dean Brown, did the Save Our School campaign start as a response to the decentralization of the UT System School of Nursing or to the UT Austin School of Nursing? And were the Save Our School concerns addressed after decentralization?
I'm not sure what instigated the change in structure for the School of Nursing. but I would say that it really was a great advantage to this School of Nursing, UT Austin School of Nursing, for us to go with Austin, because it did change our goals somewhat, and research for one thing, but so many of our goals, publications, other things, requirements for tenure were very different. So it did change our goals. But I go back and ask you to repeat any facets of that question that I'm not spoken to.
Sure thing. So you did answer the second part of the question, but the first one was, did the Save Our School campaign, did that come about as a response to decentralization? So moving it from UT system into Austin. Okay,
Yes,
that was that campaign.
Yes, it did. When the system-wide school was decentralized, the schools had to be attached to some type of parent. And our parent was the UT Austin school. And we were very fortunate in that the president was a female, and I had known her when she was in home economics, and Lorraine Rogers was the president, and she took us in with great pride. She took us in, or at least we seemed to be. She seemed to be glad to have us. So it was to our advantage, because we did have some advantages. It did change our goals as faculty members. It changed our goals as school. So yes, it was a positive thing that happened, but it did happen as a result. What caused it to happen was not pleasant. And the faculty were very disturbed about it, as I mentioned earlier. And I was very disturbed because I was leader of the faculty, and I needed to be led by the faculty many times and say what's going on here, who's in charge. But anyway, Lorraine Rogers was very helpful and was very kind to us as we developed into a school of UT Austin. We did make many changes in requirements for faculty and in expectations of faculty.
Thank you very much, Dean Brown. Our next question will be going to Dr. Wall. Dr. Wall, as an historian of the UT Austin School of Nursing, what is your favorite moment in our history, a moment that you feel was the most transformational?
Well, we talked about earlier how important coming out, how nursing schools coming out from under the leadership and the administration of the medical school was so important. That was crucial. Now that took from 1896, when the school first gets started in Galveston, to the 1960s. It took so long. So that was really important. The other one that I really want to emphasize, and I'll build on what Dean Brown said, is that this idea of when the decentralization happened. And Billy and I talked at length about this as we were writing the book, and it was pain. Of course, I didn't live through that. I was gone by then, but Billy lived through it, and it was painful because they had finally gotten out from underneath the medical schools and the doctors, and they had the system-wide school of nursing that was nursing-led. And it was the Nightingale School from the get-go, nursing led by nurses, decisions made by nurses. And it came down, and again, Dean Brown was right. No one knew where this came from, but I have to go back to what Mary Wakefield said about how important it is for what nurses have to say. And this notion, I wrote it down, events that are intense and unplanned. That's what happened in 1976. And the nursing faculty were not consulted. So it came down, it was a top-down decision.
Now we've talked about how in the long run it was the great decision, and the UT really became, the School of Nursing became legitimized as an academic school. But that was a crucial time. And I think in our history, again, there was this moment in time when nurses led nurses, even within an academic setting. And that was so unusual, this system-wide school that Dean Brown and Marilyn Williman and all of them had worked so hard to put together, and it fell apart. But it did eventually have a good ending. It was just a painful time, and but they weathered it, and the students weathered it, and we see what it's become today. So
awesome. And I have one more question for you, Dr. Wall. We have time for one more question, and this one was also asked of Dr. Wakefield. Who are the most influential faculty members for you during your time at the school? And did they have any, words of wisdom that have stuck with you throughout your career?
Well, we mentioned, of course, Dean Brown, and I do want to do a shout out to Mitzi Dreer. They were the ones who started the school. I was the second class to graduate from the University Austin campus. So I remember them, and they were so influential on me. But I want to give mention two other people. And one of them was Dr. Jerry Blaylock, who taught me med-surg nursing. And I remember, and that's the field that I eventually went into. I remember one time we were observing an ICU. This was in the 60s. Nursing students didn't go into ICUs as students. They do now, but they didn't then. So we were observing. And the nurses in the ICU were trying to get a nasogastric tube down a patient, and they couldn't get it down. And so they called in Dr. Blaylock. And Dr. Blaylock demonstrated to me right then, not only that she was a great nurse, she was a great teacher, but she practiced what she preached. And it was an inspiration to me as I taught nurses later on. I want to show my students that I know what I'm doing. I'm not just sitting up here in an ivory tower. And Dr. Blaylock showed that to me. The other one is Dr. Bonnie Rickelman, who taught me psych. And I still have a book on Hildegard Peplau that Dr. Rickelman taught. And I don't know if she's on this web or not, but I do want to let her know there is a brand new book on the history of nursing, psychiatric nursing, and it's all about Hildegard Peplau. And my friend, a friend of mine wrote the book, and I said, I know all about Dr. Peplau, Hildegard Peplau. Bonnie Rickelman taught me that. And so those words have stuck with me also. So it was a great time to be here.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much for that. All right, and we're going to wrap up that presentation and Q&A. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Wall, Dean Brown, and Dean Steiffbergen for that. I'm now going to turn it over to Dean Steiffbergen for our closing remarks.
Well, thank you. This has been so much fun, and it's been great to hear the presentations, but it's also been terrific to read all the comments in the chats, all the connecting. This has just been a fabulous day for me, and I think it has for many of you as well. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and certainly, seeing the photos, the changes in the school. I hope all that was fun for you as well, although it's not quite as good as being in person. So we, again, appreciate you joining us. I want to especially thank Dr. Mary Wakefield, Dr. Barbara Mann-Wall, and Dean Emerita Billy Brown. And a special thank you to the staff, to Amber Shaw, who we put this on her plate to do. And it was originally, we had planned to do this fabulous in-person couple of days, dedicate our new lobby and entrance, all that sort of thing. But obviously we had to make the decision to not do that. But Amber and Janet Eel, who's our graphic designer, who had put together all the great videos and slides. And thank you to the gods of Zoom and webinars that made it actually work today, because I don't know about you all, but I've been to a couple of virtual conferences where there were hiccups, and that's never fun. As many of you may know, Dean Brown celebrated her 95th birthday just about a week ago. And in honor of her contributions to the School of Nursing, we've established the Billie J. Brown, Dean Emerita Billie J. Brown Scholarship in Nursing. And if you are interested in making a gift, please know that you can do so through our website. And we've met the goal we needed for an undergraduate scholarship. If we raise a little bit more money, we can extend that to graduate students as well. So again, it's an endowment. So it's a way that forever people will know about the work and the influence that Billie Brown had on our school and on nursing and on healthcare in general. Last but not least, I want to share my props with you that are behind me here. First of all, I have, this is not behind me, but Barbara Mann Wall and Dean Brown's book on Through the Eyes of Nursing. This can be purchased through our website, the Reunion link. And then my friend that's behind me here, the Florence Nightingale dolls. Now those, not just anybody can have those. If you see those around, I've seen them around the world as I've visited other schools of nursing and alumni. These were created in conjunction with the U.S. Historical Society. They are a limited edition. All of the remaining Florence Nightingale dolls, and there's only a few left just for you, are here at the School of Nursing. So in honor of her 200th birthday and in honor of what I think is the year that nursing has demonstrated its amazing courage and amazing leadership in completely unprecedented times. If you would like to have your own Florence Nightingale doll, or you would like to give one to the nurse that you know and think so highly of, again, you can get those to our Reunion website and we will ship all those to you for free. So we just, again, thank you all for joining us. It's been great to see you all in the chat. I'm always surprised at how, when we do have these kinds of meetings, they're very emotional to me too. As someone said, who knew a virtual reunion could be emotional? But I think as we've connected with our past and as we look to our future, we know how important that is and how important being connected with nursing is. So I thank you all. Please feel free to keep following the school, and I hope you'll keep in touch with us. As alumni, you are absolutely essential. Our students, when they graduate, I always remind them they're now connected to a really fabulous group of people. And many of you have done guest things. And now that we use Zoom all the time, you can Zoom in and meet with our students in lots of capacities. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our staff, to our presenters, and most of all to our alumni. And